Hey everyone, Gary Simon of CourseCetro.com. Today we're going to take a few popular technologies such as material design, which is more of a concept, and Bootstrap 4, which just finally released to 4.0, and Angular, and we're gonna, like I said, combine all of those and get them all working together. So with the help of something called MdBootstrap.com, we're going to integrate it into an Angular project for the front-end aesthetics, essentially. All right, so right here, if you go to MdBootstrap.com, you'll see that we have a variety of ways to work with this, I guess you could say kind of like I wouldn't call it a framework, but this package. So we have jQuery, we have Angular, which we're going to use. We also have, you can use it with React, Vue, and Brandflow. All right, so to get started, if I click on Learn More on Angular quickly, this site is actually, I found it loads a little bit slow. You could, if we click download, you could see that momentarily it's going to give us a little pop-up, and it's going to mention, not a pop-up, but a new page. We could do a direct download, which we're not going to do, or you could do GitHub and NPM. So you could simply clone the GitHub repo if you click on this GitHub link right here, or you could use NPM in this way. That's the way that we're going to do it. Oh, but real quick, before we begin, make sure you check out my site, CourseCetro.com, where you're going to find a bunch of courses on modern design and development. A lot are free, and the others you can access for the cost of buying me like a 6-pack each month. That's it. Now also, it probably wouldn't hurt to subscribe here on YouTube, and be sure to make sure the notifications are turned on. All right, let's get back to it. So first, before we begin, you want to make sure that we have Node.js installed. So to do that, you open up your console, your command line, and Node V. Okay, I have it. You may not. If you don't, just go to nodejs.org, go to the download section, download the installer for your OS, and then install it with the default options, and then reload your console or command line. All right, very simple as you see. All right, so once we have access to the Node Package Manager or NPM, let's go ahead and, first we're going to install a brand new Angular project, Angular 5. So you're gonna need the Angular CLI or the command line interface to do that. So I'm just going to install npm install -g for global at Angular CLI. All right, so the CLI, of course, will allow us to get a brand new, fresh install of Angular going. All right, now once that is complete, we can then use it and access the CLI through ng. So ng, we're going to issue the new command, and then we name it. We'll call this MdBS. I already have that installed, so I'm just going to name mine too. You don't have to add that. And then we're also going to add the style flag to designate or specify the fact that we want to use Sass pre-compiling or pre-processing. So it's going to be SCSS here. All right, so we'll go ahead and hit enter, and I'll let that run through. All right, so it's installed and ready to go for me. So next thing, we're going to hop into it. So cd mdbs. And next, we have to install 4 different packages with npm. So I'm going to type them all out first, and then I'll describe what's happening. So npm I for install. We're going to save it as a dependency, and then we're going to say Angular Bootstrap -md, also chart.js at version 2.5.0, and then font awesome, and then finally hammer.js. All right, so I'm going to hit enter for that to start to install those. And basically, the Angular Bootstrap MD is the package for MdBootstrap for Angular. Chart.js is a charting library that Bootstrap, or the MdBootstrap rather, uses for charts. Font awesome is for icons that the MdBootstrap uses. And then hammer.js enables touch for certain elements on mobile devices. All right. So now let's go ahead and open up our code editor. If you use Visual Studio Code like most people do these days, just hit code in period, and then it'll load it right up as we need it to. So let's don't save that. Okay, so in here, the very first step, we're going to go to source app in our app module file. And in here, we're going to paste. Oh, by the way, real quickly, when it comes to most of my tutorials in terms of video, there's a written version. And so sometimes I will paste in coding And so just to make it easier on yourself, if you view the description here below the video, you'll find the written version. You could scroll to the code section where that's at. All right, so that's what I'm going to do real quick here. So the first thing I'm going to copy and paste is just right here. And by the way, I'm going to increase with Control and the plus sign here just so you can see everything a little bit better. Control B gets rid of the sidebar. So we're importing here this no errors schema right here from the Angular core library. And that just tells the compiler not to error based on unknown elements which are used by MdBootstrap. And then finally also we're importing MdBootstrap module, and this here we installed through npm. All right, so the next step here is to add and reference both of these here in the ng model decorator. So first we're going to add in the imports the MdBootstrap right there, and we'll say for root. And then next we're going to add a new property called schemas, and we put in this right here. I'll just copy and paste that. Oops, right there. And then period, or comma rather. All right, so that's that for that file. Next, we have to open up the Angular CLI JSON file. So that's right down here in root. And we need to add, or edit rather, for the styles and the scripts property. And so again, this is probably worth taking a look at the written tutorial, because there's 3 lines that we're going to paste above here. So we have, real quickly, our font awesome Sass right here, the Bootstrap Sass file, and then also our MDB. And then also we have just two lines to paste in for scripts. So let's open this up, and inside of here we have our chart.js and also hammer JS as well. And so if you know you're not going to need charts, you don't even need to include that. So let's go ahead and save that. And let's also open up our tsconfig.json file, which is also in the root. And just at the very, oops, that's the wrong file. I got the lint file. Let's see. There we go. This file. Now, just at the very bottom here, after this closing bracket, or curly brace rather, we're going to paste one line, which is right here. So again, this is all in the written version of the tutorial. So let's go ahead and save that. And that's all it is for the setup. So now we can go back to our console. Let me clear this out. And let's run ngserve open, which will open up a browser window for us at localhost 4200. So it's going to take just a tad bit of time, and momentarily, all right, just load it up off screen here. In just a second, it's going to load up the actual starter template that Angular, the CLI, provides us. All right, there we go. So if you hit Control-Shift-I, there should be no errors in your the console here. So right off the bat, you know that this is working when you see this type of type here, because usually I think it's like a serif font of some sort. But now we know that Bootstrap is integrated just by looking at this alone. Okay, so now let's talk about integrating, let's say, for example, one of the first elements of any website layout or app is a navigation of some sort. So because we're dealing with 3 different technologies like Bootstrap 4, Material Design, and Angular 5, I'm not going to be covering each in much detail with this tutorial. Instead, I'm just going to pick out a few pieces from the MdBootstrap Angular documentation page to help you get a quick feel for how you can start using the documentation to build a layout based on your needs. So if you want to know more about Bootstrap 4, I already created a free crash course just a couple weeks ago because it just released right back then. I'll try to remember to link that here in the description. And also, of course, I have a free Angular 5 course as well. So let's say, for instance, we want to add a navigation. So I'm going to bring up this real quick. And this is the Angular, as you can see in the title here, the documentation specifically for Angular. So What's really cool is this is pretty much how the documentation is structured. You have all your different sections down here, and on the right hand side, for instance, for this specific element like a navigation, you have all of these options. So we click on one, it'll scroll, it'll show you, all these possible options with navigations using Bootstrap. So let's go ahead and just, I'm going to copy this top one right here. And we'll say we want to have a navigation like this. So right out of the box, we can have one. So let's go back to our code editor, and we're going to open up. Let's go ahead and close this stuff. We don't need it. We'll open up our app component HTML, Control A, and delete all that, and then just paste all of that in. So let's go ahead and save this. So we go back. Ta-da, works perfectly. And also notice it is responsive. Works right out of the box. Okay, so let's make an assumption. Obviously, you're probably going to want to make adjustments and custom adjustments to this. So let's say, for instance, we want to change the background color. Like we don't want that pink that was there. Well, there's a color sections inside of the documentation, which I'm going to let load. All right, so this is based on material design colors here, and as you can see, the palette. So let's say we want to change it to blue right here. All right, well, let's go back and notice right here we have at the very first line, we have fixed top. First of all, I don't want it to be fixed, so we're going to get rid of that. Notice right here it says BG pink. Well, change that to blue. Very, very simple. Also, container inside is set to false. Let's change that to true and save this and go back real quickly. And there we go. The container inside, by the way, makes it so that there's a container where it's centered for the navigation. When it's not, it's completely fluid, and this left portion will be over here and this over here will be to the right. So obviously very simple stuff, and it helps to understand Bootstrap 4 for some of this to make sense. This is almost straight out of the Bootstrap 4 documentation anyway, for this type of navigation. So if you're interested in making further adjustments and refinements to this, just check out the Bootstrap 4 documentation. Very, very, very simple. So let's also add a section underneath this. So Material Design, or MdBootstrap, offers an area called Features section. All right, so basically this is an example right here of a feature section, which is a really common element on landing pages, and they have a bunch of versions. They have 4 different versions. So let's use this one. This one looks pretty nice. Say version 3. So we'll just copy this. All right, and we'll say, go back here real quick, come back to the bottom, and we'll go ahead real quickly and just got this portion. We want to leave main and the div container, and then paste all of that stuff in. So if we save, then we go back, there we go. Very simple. So what if you want to make some adjustments and customizations to this section? For instance, it looks like there's not a lot of padding between the elements right here. Well, again, this is where it's handy to understand some Bootstrap 4 basic concepts. So if we, real quickly, we just add a few different classes. So if we come up here to our section features portion right here, right after feature box, we could put in padding, top, because we want to add padding to the top, and we'll say a size of 5. So if you wanted to add margin, which is, the spacing inside of the element, then you would add MT. And then there's numbers, I believe it's 1 through 5 or 1 through 6 in terms of how much padding or sizing. We can also add this right where it says grid row. This says PB3. Let's change that to 5. So now if we save and go back, we'll see we just spaced out things a lot more. And actually, I think I may have added that in the wrong section. Let's try that. I want to space things out beneath here. So if this happens, Control-Shift-I, we use this little selector right here, and we find which element or which section needs to have padding to the top. All right, so this says right here is rows feature small P2. All right, so let's find that real quickly. There's one that says, okay, so I can go ahead and just leave those both at 3, and then P2 we change to P5. So now we'll save, go back, and now it's pushed it down adequately. All right, awesome. Okay, so after that, let's say, for instance, we want to add animation. All right, so again, I'm just going through a few sections of these so you can understand the documentation. So there's an animation section, and let me go ahead and bring that up separately. All right, so in this animation section, it's really cool. We can take a look at this logo. We have all these different types of animations, like flippers, like we can flip it, or sliding entrances. It's going to show you exactly, what each of these does. All right, so basic usage, it'll show you how to do this. So step 1 is to add a class of animated onto the element that you want to animate. And then you can add one of the following classes, which are all demonstrated above for you. So let's just use this one right here. By the way, as you can see, you can also do animations on scroll. Really easy to understand stuff. So I'm going to just take animated and bounce. We're going to add it to the image that we have. So the image is right here. It already has a class. So we're just going to paste it right there, animated and bounce. So now we go back real quick, and I refresh. There we go. Dead simple stuff. So let's add one final section here just for a little bit more muscle memory. And so this, we're going to add a team section. So let's choose, we'll say the team version 2 right here. All right, so by the way, when I click copy, it was not working for me. That's why I'm sitting here copying this manually. So let's just copy that. And again, get our code editor here. Okay, so just underneath that closing section, we're going to paste this one. So we'll save it, go back to a browser, and there we go. Now notice, if we look at the team section here and we see this layout compared to this layout, our layout doesn't look as good. Why is that? Well, that's because we could see this is called an MdB Pro component. So even though they give you the HTML, if you don't have access to the Pro component, which is a paid feature, then you're not going to get this nice sort of styling. So you can either buy the Pro, this MdB Pro, or you could manually adjust the CSS yourself and make it look however you want. So in our case, let's just go ahead and do that. So to do that, what you would do is first, again, use your inspector, and say, for instance, we want to change the title, which we could see is an H4. And so we know this is going to be an H4 and this is going to be H4. And also we want to change these ugly looking social media icons, or these buttons down here. So we can see they, if you look in the HTML enough, they all share a similar class, and that is, I believe it would be BTN floating. And so now what we can do is we can go to our Sass real quickly, Control B. So let's go to our app component SCSS file. And now we'll just write a couple rule sets for each one of those. So first, for the H4 element, let's make it bold. And also margin top, which we could have added the class of the MT, but I'll just do it here. And then also BTN floating, we'll say padding 5 pixels, 10 pixels, background we'll make white, and margin will be 10 pixels and 3 pixels. That's top, bottom, right, left. So now we save it. We'll go back. And let me find where the hell I was. All right, so now it's spaced out a little bit better, and these are definitely a big improvement from what they were. All right, so and that's the same thing actually with here. This was a pro features section, but it honestly, I think it looks pretty good in and of itself. You could probably stand to have these a little bit bigger, which you could easily, figure out with the inspector and then adjust the CSS from there. All right, so I mean, once again, if I show you this, we can see it's fully responsive. It will work well on mobile. You can also use responsive CSS classes for adjusting the margin that we added, but I didn't add that. You can just take a look at the Bootstrap documentation for that. And there we go. So as you can see, dead simple to get started. So yeah, hopefully, if you have any questions, be sure to comment. Make sure to check out my site, coursetetra.com, and subscribe here. See you soon.